Hi y'all, it's Kimberly here. Thanks for coming to my channel. Well, today I'm going to talk about Kevin Franke and his involvement and the interviews that he did with police. He did the first interview and he was supportive of Ruby and also of Jodi. And when he came down to the police station, he was under the impression he was going to pick up his kids and just go. But no. They wanted to do an interview with him to see what his level of involvement is and what he knew. And in the first interview, he really didn't seem to know anything. He was completely blindsided by this. He drank the Kool-Aid for quite a while. And he was talking about Jodi in a good way and that she was very helpful and very, trustworthy and all this stuff. And he was just, blindsided when they told him about the details, or what little details they did tell him about the condition of his kids, because he did not know the condition of his kids. He had not checked on the condition of his kids for over a year. And a lot of people were criticizing him for not believing that he didn't know any of this. But after these interviews, and I kind of believe, I do believe that he didn't know anything, because they kept him so out of the loop. And I'm going to talk about it. I have, oh my gosh, I've got like 8 or 10 pages of notes that I took. I'm going to be reading off a lot of notes. There's no way I can memorize any of this stuff. It's crazy. It gets really crazy. He did a second interview and it's eye-opening. And he was just totally shocked in the first interview with everything that they told him. With what the police had told him and the way they were questioning him, and he was just dumbfounded. And that's why I believe he really didn't know anything. But he has since done a second interview, and he has completely changed his tune about Jodi, and he started just telling all kinds of things, all the meaty details of what went on. And there was a timeline that he gave, and in the beginning it was about 2018 when Ruby and Jodi connected, and there was a family called the Hannah family, and they were really in the thick with Jodi. They were just singing her praises all the time. They were just enamored with her. And there was a lot of people that were I guess influential in making Ruby and Kevin feel really comfortable with Jodi, and they just kind of fell into just I guess a normal way of how people make friends. It was the same thing with Jodi. They were just becoming friends, and she counseled them. She started counseling, I think, the oldest son first, and then she started to work on Ruby and Kevin in their marriage. And in March 2021, Jodi claimed that she was being tormented by ghostly figures. So between 2018 and about 2021, they developed, like I say, like a friendship, and they had done a lot of things together, and they just kind of just melded together. And then come March 2021, Jodi claimed that she was being tormented by ghostly figures or something in her house, in the dark or something like that. And these people, the Hannah family, they were immediately concerned, and they just wanted to take care of her, so they got her to move into their house. And she lived there for about 6 weeks, and then some wild drama started. The Hannahs accused her of self-harming herself, using knives, and then trying to seduce the husband, and threatening to unalive herself. And Jodi refused that, said that she was kidnapped and held against her will. So those are two completely opposite stories. And I think I believe the Hannahs, and I'm going to lead to that. That'll give a little bit more light into this. And Ruby was becoming jealous of the Hannahs. She was talking to Kevin, telling, she wanted, like, as if she wanted more attention from Jodi that she believes that she should be in the middle of it all, and she was, I think, I think the fame that she got from 8 Passengers, she still craves some kind of attention like that. And with Ruby, with all these followers, all these people, I think she kind of wanted to be in that, just in the mix of it all. And she was kind of on the outside a little bit, but she got really jealous of the Hannahs. But when they kicked Jodi out, Ruby said to Kevin, let's bring her into our house. We need to take care of her. She's been such a good friend. And Kevin was a little bit hesitant about it, but he finally gave in. And a lot of this, you'll understand, was that Kevin was, I don't want to say weak, but because of the type of manipulation that Jodi performed on all these people, it was just mind-boggling. She was able to, she had the training in the school, the knowledge, you know, how to do things that would psychologically make people want to do whatever she wanted them to do. She could do that. She had the training and the ability. And Kevin kind of was not really for it, but he agreed to it. And he said that while she was there, he claims that dishes were flying off the shelves, that supernatural happenings were happening in the house. And it kind of made Ruby stronger in their friendship. Ruby and Jodi developed a much stronger friendship. And Jodi, the manipulation got stronger and stronger towards Kevin. She started to tell Kevin that he needed to better himself. Things were wrong because of his behavior, that he was the cause of it, and that he was evil. The way he was treating Ruby was wrong. And that he actually had to become involved in exorcism with Jodi. That he called himself the resident exorcist, kind of jokingly, but that he had to deal with things like that. And Jodi would go into trances. She would start talking in weird voices, and he had to, I guess, perform the exorcism. The way he said, he was doing that sometimes for hours at a time. And then she actually got Kevin kind of in a way where he couldn't even go into the kitchen without permission from Ruby. He couldn't, if he went somewhere, he could not come back to the house unless Ruby gave him permission. Then Jodi took over the top floor of his house, and he wasn't even able to go up there. He had lost any kind of right to his domain in his own home because of this woman. This woman had that much pull and that much power over him and Ruby. And he succumbed to it. He didn't really balk at it, or, I mean, he wanted to be with his family. He thought this was the way that it was going to fix all the problems. And I think he was having guilt because Ruby and him were having some problems. He wanted Ruby to wear lingerie, and he wanted more physical intimacy from Ruby. And one day Ruby sat down for about an hour and just started crying and telling him all these things that he was doing that was just not right and causing her pain. And you know, he's a man. He wanted to be with his wife. He wanted intimacy, and he was not going to be allowed that. And he was told to not even have anything to do with Ruby. There was an in-home separation. So he really couldn't do anything in his own home. Which I think that's wild, but that's how far he was being manipulated. And then in around July 2022, Kevin was asked to leave the home. And he ended up living in Springville. He was just living on his own, just doing his own, just working every day, and then coming home and praying and studying the Bible, and just all these type of connections. I guess it would be like therapy workbooks, and he was also doing Zoom calls with the men's group that he was involved in because of Jodi suggesting it. And then they actually did go to, at one point before this, before his separation, there was a point where Ruby and him would go to seminars and stuff with Jodi, and they were getting on stage and telling, you know, how great everything was with Jodi's help and how she was, you know, putting their marriage back together. And he actually said it did get better for a while, but then with this situation with Jodi living in the house, it just deteriorated. She was able to really sink her hooks into Ruby, and it left him isolated and cut off once he was out of the house. And it got to the point where Jodi actually told him, you're not part of the men's group anymore. You're not going to be involved in anything. And he was just totally shocked. He was like, well, you know, what? Am I still going to be helped? Or what? You know, he wanted to know, you know, what is this for? How's it going to work? And she just kept telling him, you know, God will help you. God will help you. You know, she was totally cutting him off, completely getting him out of the picture. And she was doing it through the manipulation and the mind control, the brainwashing that she had done to both Ruby, him, and tons of other couples were treated this way. This is the same pattern that she used with other couples to separate the husband from the wife. And in July 2023, Ruby called Kevin and wanted him to come over to, I think, a parking lot. They met in a parking lot. And she wanted him to sign the title of the cars over because the cars were in his name. And I think he agreed to do that. But then the title of the house, he didn't want to sign the title of the house over. At least he had enough sense not to do that. And since he did not do that, Ruby took $83,000 out of their joint bank account and their kids' college and school and college funds, took all that money, and she took it to the house, put it in a bag, and left it in Jodi's house. Cash money. Just completely took the house, or the money out of the accounts. And then the house, she kind of emptied most of the stuff out of the house, and she wanted to sell the house. And this is what the police were believing, that Jodi had found this large, I think it was like 500 acres. Actually, I had reported that was in Utah yesterday on the video I made, but it was actually in Arizona. It was a large parcel of land. They were going to get that land and work on the kids. Yeah. And he didn't sign it over. Thankfully, he was, you know, smart enough not to do that. And he was really upset about not seeing Ruby, and he just kind of was, he was stuck. He was saying that he was stuck in a way that he didn't know what to do. He couldn't reach out to anybody. He didn't, you know, he was told that not to contact anybody, not to contact any, just stay there and talk to God or something like that. Something to that effect. She was just getting rid of him. And to me, this is the typical way that a charlatan or con artist, you know, would treat their victims. They would do everything they could to brainwash them, manipulate them, take their money, and this was all a power thing with Jodi, just trying to get the men out of the way. And I believe that not everybody that she manipulated had money. I'm sure there's some people that she probably pegged that had money, but there were also things that she was doing to build up her following, to make sure that she could have power over people. And let's see, okay. Ruby actually wanted to give Jodi the 8 Passengers channel. That was a huge channel. It had over 2 million, I think it had like 2.4 million or 2.5 million followers. And that was 90% of their income. And Kevin said once they lost that, they had almost no income. And that he was actually financially supporting them, you know, every penny that, you know, after paying his expenses, he sent, you know, every penny to Ruby and tried to pay for everything else. And, you know, that's, you know, 8 passengers was the mother lode. I mean, bingo, that says it all. And the judge characterized Jodi as extremely dangerous, which I agree. And she also has like a, I think, I'm not a psychologist, I don't have any schooling or training, but this, speaks volumes, like delusions of grandeur. Like, she was trying to make herself out to a prophet, and she was building up the foundation of a cult. Like, all the followers that she was trying to get, all these people, and she was separating the men from the women and counseling the children. So I think she was setting the foundation like a cult, just like a cult. That's exactly what they do with the cult. She had the schooling, the education. She knew how the mind works. She knew everything about psychology. She's, a psychologist. She could just pick people apart, and she could really, she would make contact with vulnerable people, and those are the people that she was using to build up her flock. I feel like she was using those types of people who had issues, who came to her, and in mass luring people like that, a lot of followers that can also help her manipulate other people who have money to come into the fold. That's a classic technique of cults, and she was doing exactly that. She was just a master manipulator, and I think she'd been at it for, quite, I don't know how long she was a counselor, 10 or 20 years, something. She was at it for quite a while, and she was very practiced at it. She was becoming very experienced at working on people and breaking down people. She would break them down to the very bottom and then rebuild them in the way that she wanted. And we are in a patriarchal society. We do have a lot of religions that where the man is the man of the house, and I think she felt like competition or something like that with men, and so she was doing this in a way to get rid of them or get them to the wayside, and kind of pitting the wife against the husband in a power struggle, making the men into sheep, and just doing what man leaves their family, doesn't check on their kids for over a year, has little to no contact with their wife that they love and they want to get back together with, sends every extra dime back, that's classic, just classic manipulation for a cult. And that way, making the men into sheep, less resistance, and she would pick on men for their addictions. The men's group that he was put into had about 10 people, and there were people in there with porn addiction, sex addiction, drug addiction, all kinds of addictions. And he was feeling like he really doesn't belong in this. I just want to be back with my wife. We have a few little problems, and I truly believe if he would have went into if Ruby and him would have found a legitimate, real therapist, I think they would have flourished. I think their relationship would have been mended. I think things would have worked out, because this woman is, like some people were saying that because Ruby is the mother, that she deserved more time than Jodi. But, I think they both deserve a long sentence. But in a way, like, this type of manipulation is super dangerous and super, it just goes unchecked. It's like so much under the radar because of her licensing and her education, and people not really, not really having the power to fight back. And with all this, she was ending up validating the women, using all the issues that the husband had, and just, she insulated herself with this kind of support with all the women around, and they would have these little, I don't know what Kevin called little meetings or powwow sessions with just the women, and he called it the man-hating women's group or something to that effect. I can't really remember. And Ruby, they gave Jodi a present, and it was like a leather-bound type of journal thing, and it had inscribed on it the pen papers, P-E-N papers, and it was supposed to be like a almost like a secret journal of things that were going on in these meetings and other things, separate from Ruby's personal journals. The personal journals were the ones that were read on, I think they were put online last week or whatever, that had that detailed a lot of the stuff that they did to the kids. But this was something else that Jodi believed that it was going to bring her into a position of power, and that God would release or tell them there's a time frame for when they would release all this to the public. So that's like building up a, kind of like what Joseph Smith did, building up the Mormon religion with his experiences. And if you read any of that kind of history, this smacks exactly of what he did. It sounds just like what she's trying to do. And when Jodi started counseling Chad, the oldest son, I'm going to use his name because he's older. He's already over 18, and this is kind of important because he was 17 years old at the time that this was happening, and she was counseling him. And he was the one that they had sent off to a wilderness camp, and he's also the one that they took the bed away. And that part right there where they took Chad's bed away, and he ended up sleeping on a beanbag for like 6 or 7 or 8 months, something like that, for a long period of time. That kind of broke the channel. It created so much backlash that it kind of ruined the channel. And I think that's one of the reasons why Ruby shut the channel down, was she was getting so much flack from that. And I think she was just tired of it. And it just, it just kind of, she lost the feeling for it. And I think she wanted to go on to something else. And so when Jodi came along and her connections thing, it just fell right into place with Ruby. So it kind of replaced that. It kind of replaced the fame and everything else, because she was getting, so much adoration from her followers and stuff like this. And then this happened. And so Chad, he was being counseled by Jodi, or having therapy sessions with him or whatever. And he was paying for his own therapy $900 a month. This woman was taking $900 a month from a 17-year-old boy that she was counseling. To me, that's just way out there. I think it's so wrong, he's not even truly an adult. And the Frankies, both of his parents, Ruby and Kevin, they're partly responsible for this. I think that they should have been paying for his counseling, or I don't even know what to call them, therapy sessions, whatever you want to call them, because this woman was nothing but a manipulator and trying to brainwash people. It takes a lot of money to pay the electric bill at that $5 million mansion, apparently. That part to me just was, I thought that was kind of crazy. That's just unbelievable. And if he is gonna get custody, I called him a deadbeat dad the other day, even though he was paying for stuff. Or maybe an absentee father would be the better word, if he should get custody or not. I don't know, because Ruby and him both practiced deprivation as a part of disciplining their kids. Like, they would deprive them of food. And I think Ruby took it to an extreme when she got with Jodi. And, they took away his bed, and then they sometimes wouldn't feed them until they did certain chores and stuff like that. So, I think that those kids learn to inflict hurtful things instead of learning true discipline, because you really don't discipline somebody by taking stuff that is like a necessity away. If it's like necessity and comfort are things that you need to provide as a parent. But, if you want to restrict them from something. It's got to be something like a luxury or something like a cell phone or games or something like that. But depriving them of food, bed, things like that, those are things that you teach a child how to be responsible for when they have children. Not to not feed them and not give them a place to sleep. You know, when my dogs, when they do something bad, I don't not feed them for a whole day or something like that. I mean, I couldn't even imagine doing that, you know. My dogs are horribly ill-mannered and they're very spoiled, and that's my fault, you know. But they got the brain of a 2 or 3 year old child. It's not the right comparison, but it's something that I wouldn't even do this to my own dogs, you know. And what does that do to them psychologically? You know, they're being harmed horribly, and it's something that will last a long time. It's going to take a lot of therapy to reverse everything, to fix everything. I think that Chad and Sherry, since they were older, they were more capable of handling it and coping with it, and I think they've gone on, you know, they've been a little bit defiant, and they're more independent because they really didn't suffer what the 2 youngest children did. And the 2 middle girls were kind of, I think they were stuck in a situation where they probably saw a lot of the abuse or bad treatment, maltreatment of the 2 younger kids, and they were trying to appease their mom and do everything right. They wanted to, I think they had kind of a scared mentality. You know, they saw what was happening to the younger kids, so they stayed right on the line, and they tried to do the best they could to get through it. And, you know, it's kind of like food is like a comforting thing. It's like that candy bar commercial where it shows somebody being really grumpy until they get whatever the candy bar, I can't remember what candy bar it was, till they get that candy bar, and then they feel better. You know, food to me, I can't go without food. I'm a foodie, I'm a food lover, and it's not a tool that you bargain with your children. It's something that, you know, you provide food no matter what. If you want to discipline them, you figure out something else. Take something else away that's, like I say, that's not a necessity. And my mom, this is a little bit off topic, but it's sort of somewhat in the realm of it, that my mom, she never had enough food. She would tell us when she was growing up, they were always hungry. My mom lived in a 2-room shack, not in the city I live in a city that's about an hour away. And I went and saw that shack. She drove us by it one time. My grandmother still lived in that city, not in that same shack. She got a nicer brick house as she got older. But my mom and her brother, her older sister, 4 people lived in this 2-room shack. It was maybe like 15 by 20 feet. The bottom floor was nothing but like the kitchen and a living room, small living room with a little couch. And then the upstairs was a bedroom, and it had, I think, the 3 women, 3-year-old, my mom, sister, and her mother slept upstairs, and the son slept, or my mom's brother slept on the couch. And when I saw that, I was just, I mean, I thought we were poor. We had a hard time. We had, you know, some rough years growing up. There were times when I had like 2 pair of shoes, and I had to wear pants that were, you know, I mean, I had some bad memories of growing up. It was really hard for my mom. It was back in the 60s and 70s. She was a single parent, and it was extremely hard. And we went through really hard times. I never got anything I wanted. I never had new clothes. I never had anything great. Or we got new clothes once a year at school, and that was just about it. Maybe we got sandals and a swimsuit in the summertime. But, you know, we didn't have a lot. My mom would tell us this story about, she came home one day and there was some milk sitting on the porch, but it had a note on it that said, "It's for the neighbors, don't drink it. You know, they're not going to be home for a while. Put it in the fridge." So she had to put that milk in the fridge, and she couldn't drink it. She was so hungry, and her stomach was growling. There was no food in the house. So my mom had this thing about food. And when we were growing up, my mom bought us anything we wanted to eat. We were poor as dirt and never had enough shoes or clothes, never got anything I wanted. But I'll say, we had a refrigerator full, we had cabinets full of food, because I think that was my mom's thing. A lot of people, when they're deprived of something when they're younger, when they go through hard times, they compensate it, overcompensate for it as they grow up or when they get older. My mom did that with food, because she would have a list on the refrigerator. We wrote whatever we wanted, and my mom bought it. I mean, there was rarely nothing on that list the only reason we didn't get it was if the store was sold out of it, if it wasn't there. But my mom had like a situation like that. And I have a thing like that with shoes. I never got enough shoes, so now I have like 60 pair of shoes, and it's just things like that. My sister, the same way with her. My other sister, we never had nice furniture, things like that. And my sister buys the best quality furniture. She buys everything nice. She has a beautiful house. So I think people overcompensate for it sometimes when they are deprived of something. And, those are issues that can result from stuff like this. And I remember one time my cousins came over. We had a refrigerator full of food, and we were playing outside, and then I said, come on, let's go in and get something to drink. And she thought we were just going to drink water. No, I got Cokes and juice and whatever out of the fridge, and then I started getting, there was like, I don't know, fruit, apples, and I was like, I was making us a snack, and my cousin was like, no, we're going to get trouble, put it back. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, isn't your mom going to get mad at us? Are we even allowed to do this? And my cousins were so restricted from the refrigerator. They were not allowed to get any kind of snack. If they were hungry, they had to wait till dinner time. And I remember one time we went over to their house, and it was for dinner time, and my aunt made, soft tacos with the corn tortillas. She gave us 2 corn tortillas, maybe like 2 tablespoons of meat, and a little bit of lettuce, and just like a couple of little wedges of chopped up tomatoes on a plate like this big, and it covered like maybe that much of the plate. And I was like maybe 12 or 13, and I just like looked at my cousin, this is it? Like, I couldn't believe that. And then we finished it, and we went to ask for more, and my aunt kind of acted like I don't know, like I just was like, I couldn't comprehend it. I couldn't comprehend not feeding your kids as much as they will eat, within reason, within healthy reason. And, me and my sister was free-range kids. We just ran everywhere. We did whatever we wanted. No supervision. It was like that back then. And we just had an open policy on the fridge, or any food. We could bake cakes, muffins, cookies. We got into whatever we wanted. We just made whatever we wanted. My mom taught us to cook. My mom and my grandmother taught us to cook. We could make mashed potatoes, fried chicken. I could make a whole meal by the time I was like 7 or 8 years old. I couldn't even lift the cast iron skillet, but I could make the food, And, that's a sad memory. I remember that, and it's, this case it made me remember that. It brought that back. I hadn't thought about that for a long, long time. And, well, the hard reality really hit Ruby in a phone call that she was sharing with her sister. Or actually, I think she was talking to her lawyer. I think her lawyer was telling her that Jodi denied all this. That everything was the children's fault, that they didn't cause the injuries on the kids, that they put the tape on and everything, but he was struggling against the ropes and the chains and the handcuffs. So it was his fault. So after a while, the lawyer was kind of prepping Ruby to understand that this is really wrong. You're not going to be seen as innocent at all. If you go in there fighting this, because there's so much evidence against her. And she wrote it down in her own hand, the things that she did to these kids. And she knew right from wrong. You know, it was very clear that they knew right from wrong, because they hid the children from visitors whenever they came over to Jodi's house. People came over and the children were hidden. They didn't want anybody to see it, and Jodi also did not want the police to get into her house. She kept asking for a warrant. Do you have a warrant? And they did not show a warrant. They were just going in under exigent circumstances. And so these children were kept secret, you know. That proves they knew right from wrong. And both Kevin and Ruby, they both kind of flipped in their feelings, because I think they were on the cusp of being completely indoctrinated, but they were just at that little pinnacle point where they could slide back down. And with Ruby, it was the reality that Jodi really wasn't backing her up. She was just letting them all take the fall, that she was completely untrustworthy, just not there, not, you know, they really didn't have that strong of a friendship. She really backed out on Ruby that fast. And then Kevin, he was, you know, his feelings changed for Ruby, because all along he really kind of didn't, he really wasn't set into this, but he did it under the guise of getting his wife and his family back. That there were so many problems between him and Ruby that he put all of his trust in this therapist that was going to help him get his family back and get things back on track. And that they made him feel so dirty, so disgusting for wanting to have, you know, relations with his wife. And, you know, they're married. And he said that he was never forceful or put any kind of, like, demands or anything like that. It was just, you know, he loved his wife, and he wanted to spend, you know, very intimate, romantic moments with her. And they made him feel like such a dirty dog, and that was an easy target for Jodi to use against him. And, you know, this kind of reminds me of something. As being a writer, there's a thing called suspension of disbelief. And that's when you see like a movie or you read a book and it has a kind of a ridiculous premise or something, like, how did they do that? There's no way that would really work. And, you know, you really, like the movie Face Off with John Travolta. To me, I thought that was the most ridiculous premise ever. But it wasn't a horrible movie, but the premise of it, you know, sometimes in fantasy or some type of movies like that are, you know, it's just so far-fetched. And the idea was to, you know, you put that out of your mind so you can believe the movie. So it's suspension of disbelief. You know, something that is so unbelievable, you have to suspend that thought and you just go with it, you know, just for the entertainment value of it. And that's what that's called. And I think religion, a lot of religion, you know, there's moments in religion that, you know, there is a suspension of disbelief. And I think that's how a lot of people become indoctrinated to cults and stuff like that, that it's just so, you know, the idea that you would give up your family, your job, or either your money, you work a job you hate, or you continue, or you work 2 jobs. There's all kinds of cults that have just put people to work, you know, 80, 90 hours a week, and you give the entire paycheck. And they move you into like a dormitory style building, and there's many cults that have done stuff like that because it's all about money. And I think that's what Jodi was, you know, I think she was just completely, I think this is all in her plan. And well, Ruby had something to say about Jodi, that she stunk. She wore long sleeve hoodies. She rarely showered. And that she was a cutter. And I believe that that's when I was talking about the Hannahs, that they had kicked her out for her behavior there, that she was cutting herself with knives or something like that, to that effect. So I do believe those people, and I don't believe that Jodi was kidnapped, like she said, and she was forced to live there for 6 weeks. I don't believe that at all. And I think this woman, you know, I think this woman has severe issues. Who knows what Jodi's history is? You know, who knows what has happened to her in the past and what made this woman who she is today. Who knows, you know, along with traumatic experiences and then her going through psychological training and schooling and getting degrees in that type of field and learning to use it against people. You know, she's an unwell person, clearly. And I think the judge hit the nail on the head completely when he told her, you're very dangerous. You're a dangerous person. And these two people, Ruby is clearly narcissistic. And like I say that, I think that Jodi is like showing signs of delusions of grandeur. Like she wants to be something, you know, like somebody enamored, and she was building that foundation to become that. And these two people were train wrecks, and they never should have met in life. You know, there's people that should never meet, that it's just going to be disaster whenever they meet, and these two, you know, they crashed and burned. And Ruby really saw the light of, you know, I know people say that she was insincere, but that statement that she gave, to me, it was, I mean, I'm not supporting her in any way whatsoever, but she was very smart, very, she hit every base. She was thanking people left and right that normally she would not even trust. And she, I mean, it was so well written. She's a very, very intelligent woman. And I think she kind of used some of that manipulation that Jodi used in writing that. But I do think it was, you know, I do think it was heartfelt. I do think that she realized at the last moment, you know, I've been screwed over by this woman, and she took my life away, and what did I do to my kids? And I'm going to go to jail for the rest of my life, maybe. And I think it really, really hit her really hard. And I think those tears were real. I think it's the tears of regret. You know, if you could turn back time, I think everybody's done something that they don't ever want anybody to know about or see the light of day. I think we've all had our unproud moments in life, and this was Ruby's. And Jodi's still in denial. Like, Ruby confessed to everything. She just completely ran Jodi over with that bus, threw her under it, ran her over. Just, you know, Jodi had no way out. Jodi had absolutely no way out. And her little speech was so meek and so pathetic. You know, when after all this, you know, that she has done in her life, all the speaking, oops, I don't know what that was, felt like a fly. All the speaking that she's done, and all the manipulation, everything she's done to everybody, and she comes out, you know, this week in this pathetic, you know. And I think that Jodi believes, oh yeah, she was saying that she believes she was going to be doing a greater service in jail, that this was her actual calling or something, a greater purpose. She's going to be used for a greater purpose in jail. That's what her life's calling, or something to that effect. You know, I mean, just whatever she can make herself believe. I guess she's going away for a long time, so she's got to, I don't know, fulfill her days or something like that, building up her little cult in jail or whatever. I don't know. I'd like to see the outcome, and like, I believe that they're going to stay in jail for a very long time, because they do have to go to parole board. Their sentences were consecutive, and each sentence for each count was 1 to 15 years. I've kind of figured this out now, that the first sentence, they have to serve the first sentence, and they're going to go to parole hearing board meetings, or whatever you call it, the board of pardons and paroles or whatever. And in that state, every state is different, but I think they'll have to go after the first year, or it may be, well, yeah, their sentence was 1 to 15 years, so I guess after the first year, and the parole board will review their evidence, all the evidence to the case. They'll know everything about the case, and also their attitude, whether they've changed their way of thinking or their behaviors. That's not going to work well for Jodi because she's in total denial and doesn't believe that she did anything wrong. The children did it to themselves. But Ruby was smart. I mean, like I say, that statement she gave was so smart. She thanked people. She admitted to everything. She had regret, remorse. She, every single person, even the clerks, the court clerks, she thanked them. Everybody that had anything to do with this, her family, her friends, Kevin, her kids. She spoke to every single person on a personal level with, great purpose, But Jodi was just weak. That's all I can say. I can't even, other than being weak and pathetic, those are the two words that I can only describe her as being. And she's going to have to really and really flip herself in order to get any time cut off these sentences. She can't go in there acting like that because they're not gonna go for that. So the first sentence, they could go in there the first year, get denied for 5, 10 years, serving that first sentence. In the second sentence, they start serving that sentence. If they end up getting time shaved off the first sentence, they still have to serve the second, third, and fourth because they were convicted 4 times, 4 consecutive sentences. So they'll have to serve whatever after the first sentence is done with. They'll serve the second one. They go to parole still. I mean, they're just going to be constantly going to parole board meetings and probably getting denied for a very long time, which they deserve. Okay, that's about all I can say about that. And thank you all. Thank you for coming to my channel. And I'll be back with another video. Thanks.